Thank you, ma'am, for the kind introduction. Um, Dignitaries on the dais, honorable members of parliament, ladies and gentlemen. There's very few of us. It feels great to be in the minority, and a little bit nervous as well. So, my name is Akshay BD. We were a small team of four people who started Uber in India in August of 2013 in Bangalore, with just a few tens of cars. And it's an incredibly proud moment for us to be here associated with Vicky Flow. Of course, Uber is about getting around reliably, safely, and affordably around cities, and it's about opening an app and pushing a button and getting a car in 5 minutes, and preventing you, hopefully, from buying your second car today and in a year or two from now buying your first car. But it's also about the driver partners that we celebrate in cities that were around the world. In India, we have over 2.5 lakh drivers who are formally employed in inflexible schedules, who used to work maybe 12, 14 hours a day, at the behest of their employers, making about 15,000 rupees a month today, where they own their own cars and they're able to work flexible hours, and make up to 50, 60,000 rupees a month. But what's most exciting to us is, we realized, quite by accident, that creating opportunities for women is really about introducing flexibility to the work environment. I think Archana ji touched on that for a bit, but it's about because it tends to happen, especially that women make the schedules around sending their children to school, or around their husband or the rest of their family, and that results in a case where they're unable to be in a full-time employment. So a traditional form of full-time employment. But with Uber, you can switch on your work when you want to. You can switch it off when you want to, when you don't want to, right? And so they have the flexibility and freedom to be on the platform whenever they come. They're guaranteed a certain number of trips and therefore income, which has given us the confidence to make this commitment today to, by 2020, have 50,000 women drivers on the Uber platform. I'm incredibly proud and honored to be here. And thank you very much for having me. In fact, we have one of our women partners on the platform here. If I can just invite, with your permission, ma'am, I think Shano Begum, just to say a couple of words on her experience driving on the platform.
सबको मेरा नमस्कार। मेरा नाम शन्नो बेगम है और मैं उबर की फर्स्ट लेडी ड्राइवर हूँ, सॉरी मैं पार्टनर हूँ। और एक्चुअली मेरी जो फैमिली है वो बहुत ही, मतलब कह सकते हैं, बहुत गरीब हम लोग तबके से थे। और मैंने आज़ाद फाउंडेशन से ट्रेनिंग लेकर एक ड्राइविंग स्किल मैंने 7 साल पहले स्टार्ट किया था। जगह-जगह मैंने जॉब किया है, लेकिन मैं अपने परिवार को इतना मूव नहीं कर पा रही थी, इतनी मतलब फ्रीडम नहीं दे पा रही थी। जब मैं उबर के बारे में आई, उबर को देखा और मैंने वहाँ पर पहली बारी में ही मैंने अगले दिन ही जॉब छोड़ दी और मैंने अपनी पहली कार बुक की, जो होंडा एमेज है। उसके बाद मैंने दूसरी कार अपनी बुक की हुई ले रखी है, उसको मेरा भाई चलाता है। और हर वीकली मैं 10,000 से 12,000 तक की इनकम वीकली लेती हूँ उबर से। और बहुत ही अच्छा अनुभव है मुझे अनुभव का। और मेरे बच्चे जो जिस पढ़ाई के लिए वेट करते थे कि मैं कहाँ से, मेरी मम्मी कितना पैसा लेंगी, क्योंकि मैं सिंगल मदर हूँ। तो मेरी 2 बेटियाँ कॉलेज में हैं, एक बेटा मेरा 10th क्लास में है। खुदा का शुक्र है कि उबर ने मुझे ऐसे प्लेटफ़ॉर्म पे लाकर खड़ा किया कि जिसकी वजह से मेरे बच्चे अच्छी स्किल की पढ़ाई ले पा रहे हैं, अच्छा खान-पीन ले पा रहे हैं और गुड टच में कि मैं उबर में हूँ। और उबर से इतना मुझे फ्रीडम मिलता है कि मैं जब चाहे काम करती हूँ और जब चाहे मैं नहीं करती। जैसे कि आज सुबह से मैंने काम नहीं किया और थोड़ी मेरी बॉडी ठीक नहीं थी, तो मैं आराम से घर में सो रही थी और अक्षय सर और सर का फ़ोन आया कि आपको ज़रा चलना है। तो मैं नहीं जानती थी कि आप लोगों के बीच में, इतनी बड़ी-बड़ी हस्तियों के बीच में मुझे उबर ने लाके खड़ा कर दिया। और मेरी कॉलीग, मतलब मैं आपको किस तरीके से बताऊँ कि उबर कितना सेफ्टी है। जैसे कि हमारे सेफ्टी को लेकर, जैसे क्लाइंट हमें बुकिंग के टाइम हमें रेटिंग देते हैं, ऐसी हमें भी है कि हम क्लाइंट को रेटिंग देते हैं। अगर अदरवाइज़ वैसे अभी 10 महीने हुए हैं मुझे और मैं 2 गाड़ियों की मालकिन बन चुकी हूँ। लक खुदा का कि गोबर की वजह से। और जैसे कि क्लाइंट भी बड़े हैप्पी मिलते हैं मुझे, अल्लाह का शुक्र है कि अभी तक हमारे क्लाइंटों ने कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं दिया, कोई परेशानी नहीं दी। और जेंट्स भी लेती हूँ मैं, लेडीज़ भी लेती हूँ। लेडीज़ मिल जाती हैं तो वो ज़्यादा खुश हो जाती हैं कि एक लेडीज़ के साथ हम लेडीज़ जा रहे हैं, तो उनको किसी चीज़ की परेशानी नहीं होती। बट हमें हमें जेंट्स से भी कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं हुई और वो इतने खुश होते हैं, कहते हैं कि ये तो बहुत अच्छा काम है, जो आप इसमें बढ़कर आएँ और अच्छा काम कर रही हैं। बहुत हिम्मत बनाते हैं। ना ही तो इसमें लेडीज़ का कोई काम होता है, ना ही जेंट्स का, लेकिन एक ड्राइवरिंग में अभी तक जो प्रथा सँभाली हुई थी, वो जेंट्सों ने ली हुई थी। लेकिन अभी हमारे देश में भी, हमारी दिल्ली में भी लड़कियों को, औरतों को बहुत सारी जगह ट्रेनिंग भी दे रहे हैं और हम भी यही चाहते हैं कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हमारे पार्टनर लेडीज़ आएँ और जो हम आप जैसी मैडमों को सर्विस दें और हमारी जो ऊपर से सब कामना हैं वो पूरी हों।
Thank you
सो
very much. Thank you.
या
Abhi. No questions, please. Right now, we'll just no. Wonderful. आप interact कर लीजिए after the program. Thank you, Shanoji.
थैंक यू।
So thank you very much. Everybody is very inspired. The purpose of all this, we in transport and presenting all this to you, is also to say that we can bring these initiatives to your constituencies if you would like to partner with us. You know, the transport, the e-commerce, the training. You know, talking to maybe the telecom people. You may talk to yourself when you do. But any digital literacy training, the village project. So this is something we're looking forward to working with you. So now we get to the, and I'd like to thank Uber again for giving us this opportunity for women. I believe the other thing is that in Uber, as you shared with us, the 20% of the drivers in New York in Uber are women, while in the standard thing it's only about 3%. So wherever you have formal barriers to entry and there is somebody taking a decision as to who gets this license or who gets a thing, you see far lower percentages of women. And wherever you have open entrepreneurship like Uber, where anybody, there's nobody actually saying that you can't come in. Or Snapdeal, I think, has 30% women vendors, while in actual MSME, it's only about 10%. So this removal of barriers really helps women in this. So now we come to the discussion. India is rated 114 out of 142 on the Economic Gender Gap Index. Women own less than 5 to 10% of land assets and account for less than 3% of outputs of businesses. Female participation in labor force is falling. It was 40% in the 90s and has come down to 27% as we liberalize and become more rich. More women are staying at home. There's a U-shaped curve which is well established in women, but in India it's quite shocking actually. Only 11% of the Lok Sabha is women. The silver lining is that we are number 15 on the political gender gap index. How do we translate our political power to economic power? I would request the parliamentarians to start off the discussion by speaking for about 5 minutes on the special innovative measures they have taken in their constituencies, especially involving women in non-traditional jobs. So I'd like Meenakshi ji to begin.
Thank you very much, Archana, Jyoti ji, my friends Kapuli and Arpita, Geeta.
Oh, Meenakshi ji, let me introduce you.
No, that's okay. And most of the people are from my constituency and you all know me. I'm getting lots of thanks, so they all know me. Udit, Vivek, Mr. Meena, Rajiv ji, Rebecca. I mean, I know virtually everyone by first name, so that's okay. Um, we can't give jobs. So because you said how many jobs you have given in your constituency, I said let me first clarify that as members of parliament we don't give jobs. Jobs are given by employers, and you are the people who are employers. So counter question from me would be, how many jobs have you created for women? Are you working as seriously as Uber is? That will be my question. And if you're not, I'll seek the data from you, because that's my job, to put the right question in terms of policy, to put the right perspective, and that's the kind of advocacy we do. And in that advocacy, one advocacy I've been doing for years, because I've been associated with this cause for so very many years, that I feel that times have actually changed. If I see the 90s, the 2000 decade, and now, things have actually changed. And I remember most of the time, most of these programs would be women talking to women. So I would normally say you're talking to the converts and it's no point. And if we really want to make an impact, let's have men on board. And if we see our own history, the history of this country, it is a fantastic history, and especially in gender also. Because all the changes that we saw in pre-independence era and post-independence have come by male participation. And men in this country, fortunately, have really not objected to those issues. And one thing, because most people, I feel, are not aware of certain facts, the fact is that 1916, women were first considered person in Manitoba, 1916. Now, a whole lot of people abuse Manu and so on and so forth. I'm not saying everything was right and everything was perfect, but Manu was the first one to give women the right to property and the concept of Istri Dhan that time. So 1916 only you started considering women as persons. 1928, women were 1920, US, gave right to universal franchise. Then 1928, a couple of other states got it. 1932, UK gave it. And India becomes freedom in 1947, 1950. You have your constitution, and one stroke, all women get universal franchise, no objection. And similarly, all the religious laws which have had trouble recognizing women as persons in all kinds of religion, or without going into the depth, here you've seen all kinds of reforms happening, whether it's marriage law, property, it's co-parcenary, and Parliament has done those acts. Even when, which is a very touchy issue, and it was so made to be a touchy issue. To begin with, it was not a touchy issue. To begin with, it was a very open issue, and people work for the freedom, and freedom meant freedom for everyone. So freedom also meant freedom for Muslim women from all kinds of patriarchy that we keep talking about. And fortunately in India, we did discuss Uniform Civil Code at the time of independence and post-independence at the time of constitution making. And fortunately for the country, we did have 3 Supreme Court judgments before Shah Bano, which recognized women's equality even in that religion, which post that Shah Bano just sought to politicize the issue, which was unfortunate, because I don't think there should be any politicization. In fact, I had a word with someone when we were talking to an old, I can't call him a friend, but somebody I've known over the years and interacted professionally, and is a very renowned journalist. So ended up saying, oh, so what's on? So I say, I feel there are certain issues which are beyond politics. There are certain things on which India as a nation, if it has to progress, there can be no politics. There should not be any politics. And unfortunately, all kind of people are meddling in those affairs. People who have no concern, who can't control their own universities, are meddling in affairs of this country. So coming from there to this particular aspect of women empowerment, I am of the opinion women really don't need any empowerment. Women are very, very empowered. Because most of the women I see in this audience also, who I have known for 20 years, 30 years, and more, I've seen each one of you, a lot of you have seen me grow in front of your eyes and change the perspective. So I feel women know how to accommodate various points of views, adjust, change, depending on the time, schedule, necessity, alter their lifestyle, and whatever is in the best interest of their and their family, they act accordingly. And whatever time they feel and the change, they accordingly change themselves also. So, which is a huge benefit. So, instead of having a certain mold fixed for a woman that she must work certain hours, she must do this, she must do that. I think if we only allow women to be what they wish to be, instead of putting question marks, I think the first thing is no questions to be asked. No questions to be asked. Socially, financially, politically, no questions to be asked. Only same questions to be asked as you ask any other male colleague. No more than that is needed. Second aspect is that give them the education, give them the skill. I feel skill. When I was looking at the graph which you have drawn, on that particular graph, I saw that you segregated the society in three categories. Uh, Well-off, middle income, and grassroots. That's what you call. But if I look at the sociological division in each group, I mean, I look at the, say, sociological division in the very well-off, which the audience here represents. So even in very well-off sociological representation, women are not at par with men. Let's be very clear. It's not as if money, education gives you equalized status. And in that process, a certain remark which came about women directors, and very nicely everyone admitted half of them are sleeping partners and sleeping directors, and they are not really the working directors. So it shows the duplicity in a setup. I have attended so many international and national conferences, so I feel as a society, we are a very, very aware society, and all credit to our male colleagues, because nobody will object if there is a law which seeks women director to be on board. And so many countries who we look at, you know, when you're talking about New York, you're talking about UK, you're talking about so many developed nations, economically well off, where you find this law is not in existence in many of those places. Many of those countries, they don't have women director as part of their corporate law. I heard the word gender budgeting. Now, something I need to say is gender budgeting for the consumption of all my friends here. Gender budgeting not necessarily is a concept where we allocate certain sum of money to women. On the contrary, in India, you have a ministry called Women and Child, which has a separate budgetary allocation also. But I think gender budgeting is a method of looking at a budget, that how many finally reaches the women and how many we need to spend on getting more women. Say, if you're looking at skills, and I look at skills very closely because I feel if we really want an equal society, skill is the base for economic empowerment. So you look at, say, gardeners. So most women in their homes look after the plants, if I'm not mistaken, except certain exceptions. I am an exception. But these women are never employed as gardeners. Whole lot of us sitting here drive our own cars or are capable of driving our own cars, and we had to make such a big hue and cry that at least 3% women drivers get to be employed. We see many women cooking at home. I mean, most women cook at homes, and most food at homes in families is cooked by women. And everybody remembers maa ke haath ka khana, right? Because father never cooks and is not capable of cooking. But most cooks in the hotels and agencies are men. Always, right? So my point is that if we really want economic equality, first focus has to be skill training. And only through skill training can we decide to give economic equality. And that is what entrepreneurs need to focus on. And that is where women entrepreneurs, women in position, if we really want to change the entire economic scenario of any country, any place, then we definitely need all stakeholders to work together. And as parliamentarians, on behalf of all my friends here, male and female friends, irrespective of the parties we represent, we all believe in this. And I'm very proud of the fact that India, sociologically, is a very different country. And we do have that society where women automatically get respect, irrespective of which party you come from, what you say, what you do, everybody will immediately accept you as a person because there is a certain amount of trust and faith that such a line shall not be crossed in your social interaction. And this much needs to be done. I mean, simple escorting someone, bringing a cup of tea. Certain decencies are inbuilt in the social system. And that respect and social system, I think we must learn to